Welcome to the Real Money Pathway, where I share my journey from financial collapse to lasting wealth. I'm David Kim, and I'll guide you through practical strategies that transform my finances and can transform yours too. Let's build your pathway to financial freedom.
The content of this podcast is provided for general information purposes only and do not constitute financial advice. Listeners should not act upon the content or information here without first seeking appropriate advice from a financial professional.
Welcome back to Real Money Pathway. I'm David Kim, and we're continuing our protection and security journey in Season 2. Today we're talking about something that most people never think about until it's too late: legal protection during financial rebuilding. This isn't about complex estate planning or business structures. This is about basic legal safeguards that protect you and your family during vulnerable periods. I want to share a conversation that scared me more than my bankruptcy filing itself. About 6 months after my bankruptcy was finalized, I was meeting with my attorney about a consulting contract when he asked a simple question. David, if something happened to you tomorrow, could Lacey access your accounts to pay bills? I thought about it and realized actually the answer was no. She wasn't on any of my bank accounts. We kept most of our accounts separate at that time. We didn't have a power of attorney and wouldn't even know where to find my financial information. Then he asked an even scarier question. If you were in a coma for 6 months, who would make medical decisions for you? Who would pay your bills? Who would run your consulting business? That's when it hit me. I had been so focused on rebuilding my finances that I completely ignored rebuilding my legal protection. I was essentially operating without a safety net, and any unexpected life event could have destroyed not just my recovery, but my family's security. Today, I'm sharing the legal protection framework that I built during my recovery, why financial rebuilding creates unique legal vulnerabilities, and practical steps to build essential legal safeguards without expensive attorney fees. First, let's understand legal vulnerabilities during recovery. Financial rebuilding creates legal vulnerabilities that most people just never consider. When you're focused on survival and recovery, legal protection feels just like a luxury. You can't afford it. You don't need it. But the reality is you can't afford not to have basic legal protection. You can afford it and you do need it. So this brings us to the access crisis. During my bankruptcy, all my previous legal documents became outdated or invalid. My ex-wife was no longer my emergency contact or beneficiary, but I hadn't updated anything to reflect my new reality. Lacey was becoming more and more important in my life, but she had no legal standing to help me if something went wrong. This created what I call an access crisis. If I had been hospitalized, who would be able to make medical decisions on my behalf or access my accounts to pay bills? Who would ensure my children were cared for? The answers were either no one, or my ex, and neither of which reflected my actual wishes or circumstances. Then, as I built my consulting business during recovery, I was operating as a sole proprietor with no legal protection. This meant that any business liability could threaten my personal assets, the same assets I was working so hard to rebuild. If a client had sued me over a consulting project, they could have gone after my personal bank account, my car, even my future earnings. All that progress I was making in recovery could have been wiped out by a single business dispute. Then there were family protection gaps. My situation with my children created additional legal complications. What if something happened to both me and my ex-wife? Who would become my child's guardian at the time? What about their financial support? These questions became even more urgent as I started rebuilding wealth that could support their own futures. I also realized that my children had no protection if something happened to me during their visits. They would have no access to medical care or the ability to make emergency decisions because of the lack of proper legal documentation. Then digital asset vulnerability. This is a modern problem that didn't exist for previous generations. Most of my business and financial life existed digitally: online banking, cloud storage, digital contracts, social media accounts, all that supported my business. If something happened to me, how would anyone access these digital assets? I had important business contracts stored on OneDrive, client relationships maintained through LinkedIn, and financial accounts that some existed only online. Without proper digital asset planning, these could have been inaccessible, potentially destroying my business and complicating my family's finances. For the recovery timeline, that itself presents a problem. Legal protection becomes even more critical during recovery because you're in transition. You're changing banks, you're moving to new locations, you're starting new businesses, forming new relationships. Each of these changes creates legal implications that have to be addressed. But here's the problem: legal protection takes time to implement properly. And during recovery, you often need decisions made very quickly. If you wait until you have enough assets to justify legal planning, you're operating without protection during the most vulnerable period of your financial life. And finally, the compliance reality. Financial rebuilding often involves working with new financial institutions, forming business relationships, and entering into contracts. Each of these activities has legal implications that need to be managed properly. Without basic legal protection, you're essentially rebuilding your financial life without any safety net. One unexpected legal issue can undo months or years of careful recovery work and beyond into the future. After that wake up call from my attorney, I realized I needed to build basic legal protection quickly, but also affordably. Here are the essential documents I created during my recovery in order of priority. First, a power of attorney for my finances. This may not sound common, but it was my first priority. A financial power of attorney gives someone you trust the authority to handle your financial affairs if you can't. This includes paying bills, accessing bank accounts, managing investments, and making financial decisions on your own behalf. I created both a durable power of attorney, effective immediately, and a springing power of attorney, only effective if I become incapacitated, that gave this legal authority to Lacey with my brother, who's also an attorney, as a backup. This cost about $200 through an online legal service, LegalZoom, but there are many others, and it gave me a very good peace of mind. The key is choosing someone you trust completely and making sure they understand your financial situation. I spent time with Lacey going over my accounts, my passwords, and financial priorities so she could step in seamlessly if needed. The second important document is the healthcare directive with medical power of attorney. This document specifies your medical wishes and designates someone to make healthcare decisions if you can't. During my consulting recovery, this became especially important because I was traveling frequently for work and often far from family. I created a comprehensive healthcare directive that covered not just end of life decisions, but also general medical care preferences, hospital preferences, pharmacy information. I also designated Lacey as my medical power of attorney with very clear instructions about involving my children's mother in any decisions that may affect them. Then the third document is now your basic will. Even during financial recovery, you need a will. Everyone needs a will. Mine wasn't complex. It designated guardianship for my children until they turn 18, distributed my modest assets, and named an executor. The key was having something official rather than leaving these decisions to state law. I used a simple online will service that cost about $100 and ensured the document was properly executed according to my state's requirements. While this wasn't as comprehensive as a will prepared by an attorney, it provided essential protection during my rebuilding period. Next came beneficiary designations. This is often overlooked, but critically important. I updated beneficiary designations on all of my accounts, my bank accounts, retirement accounts, life insurance policies, even PayPal and Venmo, and other financial apps. During recovery, this was especially important because my beneficiaries had changed dramatically. I had to remove my ex wife from all of my accounts where appropriate and add Lacey where it made sense. I also designated secondary beneficiaries in case something happened to both of us. Next, business formation document. As my consulting business grew, I formed a limited liability company, an LLC, to protect my personal assets from business liabilities. This cost about $300 in filing fees and legal service charges, but provided crucial protection. The LLC separated my business activities from my personal recovery assets. If a client sued me or my business, they couldn't go after my personal bank account or other assets if it was through business activities. This protection became more important as my business grew and I took on larger, more complex projects. Digital asset documentation. I created a comprehensive digital asset inventory that included all of my login information for my financial accounts, my cloud storage access details, my business account information, social media accounts that were important to my business, all of my digital subscriptions, as well as cryptocurrency accounts that I had started investing in. This information was securely stored and shared with Lacey so she could access these accounts if needed. I also included instructions for closing or transferring accounts according to my wishes. This entire document creation process took about 3 months and cost roughly $800 to $1,000. While this felt like a lot during my recovery, it was far less than the potential costs of not having that protection. More importantly, it gave me confidence that my recovery efforts would be protected and my family would be cared for regardless of what happened to me. Now, let's walk through exactly how I built my legal protection system during my recovery, step by step. This wasn't about creating perfect legal structures, it was about building adequate protection that I could afford and implement very quickly. Phase one was emergency protection, the first 30 days. My immediate priority was ensuring someone could access my accounts and make decisions if something happened to me. I started with simple forms that I could complete quickly and inexpensively. I used LegalZoom to create a basic power of attorney for both healthcare and finances. While these weren't as customized as attorney prepared documents, they provided immediate legal protection for under $300. The key was having something in place rather than having perfect documents. I also immediately updated beneficiary designations on all of my accounts. This took about 2 hours but cost nothing and ensured my assets would go to the right people if something happened. Phase two, business protection, took about 2 months, months 2 to 3. As my consulting income stabilized and grew, I formed an LLC for my business. I researched the requirements with my state, which was Texas at the time, and used an online service to handle the filing. The total cost was about $400, including state filing fees and registered agent services. The LLC provided immediate protection for my personal assets while I was building my business. It also gave me credibility with clients and made it easier to separate business and personal finances for tax purposes. I also obtained business insurance, basic business insurance, which contained general liability and professional liability coverages. This wasn't expensive. It was about $40 per month for $1 million of general liability coverage, but provided additional protection against business related legal issues. My comprehensive protection in phase three, months 4 to 6, was about once the basic protection was in place, working with an attorney to review and improve my legal documents. This cost about $1,500, but ensured everything was properly prepared and coordinated. The attorney helped me create slightly more sophisticated documents that reflected my specific situation, a will that properly addressed even my children's needs, a more detailed power of attorney document, business operating agreements for my LLC, and contract templates for my consulting work. Then I implemented a annual legal review. This annual review kept my legal protection current. Every January, I would review my designated agents and beneficiaries to make sure they were still appropriate. If my asset levels required more protection, whether changes in my life required other document updates, and if there were any new legal requirements that I needed to address. And just like any other system, I created a document management system that was a simple cloud based solution to manage all of my legal documents. Master list of all documents with the creation dates and review schedules, really just in an Excel spreadsheet, and then a secure digital storage for each of those documents with clear instructions of how to access those documents in emergency. Let's talk about protection evolution. My legal protection system evolved just as my financial situation evolved and improved. I started with basic wills and powers of attorney. I added business protection as my consulting grew, increased liability coverage as my assets grew, and added more sophisticated estate planning as my wealth increased. The key insight was that legal protection doesn't have to be perfect, especially from the beginning. It just needs to be adequate for your specific current situation and also capable of evolving as your circumstances change. So here's the practical takeaways for this episode. Let's make immediate actionable steps. Legal protection during recovery doesn't have to be overwhelming or expensive, but it does need to be systematic and prioritized. So here's my legal protection checklist, the same prioritized approach that I used during my recovery. Your 90-day legal protection plan starts with your first month covering your emergency essentials. You create and update that basic will. You establish financial and healthcare powers of attorney. You update all beneficiary designations, and then you create emergency contact and document location lists. Month 2 is about business and asset protection. You form business entities if you have business income, obtain appropriate insurance for both business and liability, create basic business contracts and agreements if you don't already have them, and organize and secure all legal documents to be redundant and backed up in the cloud. And then in month 3, you develop a comprehensive review system. Review all your documents with a qualified attorney if possible. Create digital asset inventory and access plan. Establish annual review and update procedures, and then ensure all your family members know exactly how to access critical documents. So here's your legal protection priority list from top to bottom. First, your critical items to do now, this week, are update your beneficiaries on all your accounts. Then your essential items to do this month is create those basic powers of attorney. And the important pieces to do within this quarter is, again, to form those business entities. And an ongoing priority list of items are to annually review and update all of these documents. So here's my assignment for you this week. Start with the simplest but most impactful task. Update beneficiary designations on all your financial accounts. Takes 15 to 30 minutes, costs nothing, and ensures your assets go to the right people if something happens to you. Once all your protection is established, maintain it with a simple monthly review. Are all your documents updated? Are they expiring? Do they need updates? Have life changes affected your legal needs? Are your designated agents still appropriate? And do you need additional protection as your assets grow? Legal protection during recovery isn't about creating perfect, it's about ensuring that unexpected life events don't destroy your financial progress that you're working so hard to achieve. Today, we covered legal protection during financial rebuilding, understanding the unique vulnerabilities that recovery creates, essential documents everyone needs regardless of wealth level, and practical approaches to building legal protection systematically, but also affordably. The key insight is legal protection isn't a luxury for after you've built wealth. It's essential protection for wealth you're building now. In our next episode, The New Credit Landscape, we're shifting focus to how credit rebuilding has evolved even since my recovery. I'll share how credit systems have changed in recent years and what this means for people rebuilding credit today. We'll cover new credit building tools and strategies, how modern credit monitoring differs from what was available during my recovery, and opportunities that exist now for faster credit rebuilding. As you work on building your legal protection this week, remember that every document you create, every system you establish strengthens your overall financial security during your recovery now and into the future. You're not just protecting what you have now, you're protecting everything you'll eventually build in the future. I'd love to hear about your legal protection questions and experiences. Visit realmoneypathway.com and let me know what legal protection challenges you face during your recovery journey. Until next time, I'm David Kim. Remember, it's not just about money, it's about building your real money pathway to freedom. Thanks for joining me on the Real Money Pathway podcast. I'm David Kim, reminding you that financial success isn't about perfection, it's about progress. So subscribe now for more strategies, and remember, your journey to lasting wealth starts with the very next decision you make.